Each is great in his own place. A certain king used to inquire of all the sannyasis that came to his court, who is the greater man, he who gives up the world and becomes a sannyasi, or he who lives in the world and performs his duties as a householder? Many a wise man tried to answer, but no one could answer satisfactorily. Some asserted that the sannyasi was the greater, and others said that the householder who performs his duties is the greater. The king demanded proofs. When they could not give them, he gave them punishment. At last, there came to his court a sannyasi who with serene boldness said, "O king, I am here to answer your question." Immediately the whole court became silent, everyone eager to know the answer. The king took a little time and then slowly but clearly said, "O sage, do you know my condition? If you fail to prove, you will be punished." "I know that," replied the monk. "Well then, tell us, who is greater, a sannyasi or a householder?" "Each, O king, is equally great in his place." "Prove this to me." "I will prove it, but you must first come and live as I do for a few days." The king consented and followed the sannyasi out of his own country, and through many others until they came to a great capital city. There they heard the noise of drums and music, and heard also the criers. The people were assembled in the streets in gala dress, and a great proclamation was being made. The king and the sannyasi stood there to see what was going on. The crier was proclaiming loudly that the princess of that country was going to have her Swayamvara Sabha. It was an old custom in India for a princess to choose her husband from the assembly of princes. The princess would be taken round the assembly hall on a palanquin throne. If she was pleased with any one of the princes, she would put a garland of flowers round his neck, and he would become her husband. The princess came sitting on her throne, and the bearers carried her from place to place. She did not seem to care for anyone. Was this meeting going to be a failure? Just then, there came a young man, a sannyasi, handsome and shining as if the sun had come down to earth. He stood in a corner of the assembly, watching what was going on. The throne with the princess came near him, and as soon as she saw the handsome sannyasi, she threw the garland over his neck. At first the sannyasi was a bit perplexed, but then he seized the garland and threw it off, exclaiming, "What nonsense is this? I am a sannyasi. What is marriage to me?" The king of that country thought that perhaps this man was poor and dared not marry the princess. So he said to him, "With my daughter goes half of my kingdom now, and the whole kingdom after my death." The young monk threw the garland off once more, saying, "Nonsense! I don't want to marry," and walked quickly away from the assembly. Now the princess had fallen so much in love with this young man that she said, "I must marry this man, or I will die." and she went after him to bring him back. Then our other sannyasi, who had brought the king there to watch that ceremony, said to him, "King, let us follow this pair." And so they walked after them, but at a good distance behind. The young sannyasi who had refused to marry the princess walked out of the city for several miles. When he came to a forest, entered it, the princess followed him, but soon she lost track of him and began to weep. Then our king and the other sannyasi came up to her and said, "Don't weep, dear. We will show you the way out of this forest, but it's too dark for us to find it now. Here is a big tree. Let's rest under it, and in the morning we'll go early and show you the road." Now, a little bird and his wife and their 3 little ones lived in a nest on that tree. The bird looked down and saw the 3 people under the tree and said to his wife, "My dear, what shall we do? Here are some guests in the house, and it is winter, and we have no fire." So he flew away, found a bit of burning firewood, and dropped it before the guests, to which they added fuel and made a blazing fire. But the little bird was not satisfied. He said to his wife, "My dear, there's nothing to give these people to eat, and they are hungry. We are householders. It's our duty to feed anyone who comes to the house. I must plunge into the fire and perish." The guests saw him falling and tried to save him, but he was too quick for them. The little bird's wife saw what her husband did. She said, "Here are 3 persons and only 1 little bird for them to eat. It's not enough. It's my duty as a wife not to let my husband's effort go in vain. Let them have my flesh also." She too fell into the fire and was burned to death. Then the 3 baby birds, when they saw what was done, and that there was still not enough food for the 3 guests, said to each other, "Our parents have done what they could, and still it's not enough. It is our duty to carry on the work of our parents. Let our bodies go too." And then those brave little birds dashed down into the fire. Amazed at what they saw, the 3 people could not, of course, eat those birds. They passed the night without food. And in the morning, the king and the sannyasi showed the princess the way, and she went back to her father. Then the sannyasi said to the king, "O king, you have got the answer to your question. I told you, and you have seen, that each is great in his own place. If you want to be a householder, hold your life as a sacrifice for the welfare of others, like those birds. And if you choose the life of renunciation, be like that young sannyasi, and do not even look at beauty and money and power." Moral: each is great in his own place, but the duty of the one is not the duty of the other.